coral reefs. I guess everyone knows about the Great Barrier Reef, but there are lots and lots of other coral reefs right around the Australian coast. And our Perth correspondent, Dick Bealby, he had to travel right up to Ningaloo Reef off the northwest cape of Western Australia to file this report.
As the waves pound on the reef, they provide food for millions of mouths. A coral reef is literally a wall of mouths, tiny coral mouths which filter the plankton in the water and use the energy it provides to grow. As each coral layer grows on the remains of the old, they begin to form a barrier which can even stop the waves. The coral becomes a home for hundreds of different kinds of creatures. Coral reefs are also like forests on land. They can use sunlight to synthesize food from the minerals in the water, photosynthesis. So the whole reef is an energy trap, an oasis in a desert of ocean. It provides far more food than it takes. This reef is Australia's newest marine park. It's been called Western Australia's Barrier Reef. Ningaloo Reef, however, is different from the Great Barrier Reef in Queensland because it's right on shore. It can easily be reached in small boats or by walking right out from the beach. It's therefore much easier to visit and may suffer more easily from the actions of humans. Of course, it is less well known than the Great Barrier Reef, but still thousands of visitors come each year to camp, fish, collect shells, walk on the reef. They're all having an effect, not a good one. So the decision has been made by the government to manage human activity here. So basically what we have here are three questions. Firstly, where is Ningaloo Reef? Secondly, what does it mean to turn it into a marine park, especially for us humans? And thirdly, why? Why has the government gone to so much time and expense to do this? Well, the first question at least is easy to answer. I'm standing on what could be considered the northwest corner of Australia. This is Northwest Cape, and out there in the sea is the living reef. It stretches from the tip of the Cape 260 kilometres to the south. As for our second question, what does that mean? It means preservation of some areas and opening up others for recreation. What's a marine park and why have you made one here?
It's a place where the fauna and flora, the wildlife and the environment is given complete protection, and a place where people can come to enjoy it.
No less beautiful in its own way than the sea. Yardie Creek. This is an excellent example of the way Cape Range comes down to meet the sea. All behind me here are the cliffs and the rocks of the range itself. But the creek is part of the ocean in that it's saltwater. The fish that live in here are the same as the fish in the sea. The plants over there, mangroves, which are a saltwater plant. Up on the cliffs, birds live. Birds, wallabies, all sorts of reptiles. A mixture of land and sea. Reef herons, corellas. A perfect example of the way in which you can't really separate the reef from the hinterland. There are mysteries in this interface yet to be solved. Every time somebody dug a well in the old pastoralist days, fish appeared. Blind, in fact eyeless, cave fish. Where did they come from? How did they get here? Do the pathways of water travel continuously under the ground too? Did these fish swim here? Sometimes people ask, why bother about questions like this? Why bother to study things like national parks or coral reefs? What good can it do us? Perhaps the answer to that is not so much what we learn, but how it can change our attitudes. For example, white people came into this area of coast over 100 years ago, and without knowing it, they brought fundamental changes. A good example is this buffel grass. First introduced as feed for camels, it's slowly taking over. In 100 years, the ground cover will have changed, maybe the worse for other plants, animals and humans. We've done similar things with soil erosion and in the sea. One thing the Ningaloo coral reefs can teach us is how short is a lifetime. I mean, if I'd been sitting right here 15 million years ago, I'd be holding my breath, I'd be underwater, because this here is actually an earlier version of the living reef. There were sharks swimming around 15 million years ago that had teeth bigger than most sharks alive today. And the height of the reef above sea level gives us an idea of how the levels of the seas have changed. Will they change again? Is the sea out there rising slowly now? By looking at past coral reefs, we can see questions for the future. And by looking at the present, we may be able to help predict the future. If we can preserve places like this long enough to study them, we may change many of our ideas, become less ignorant. For example, this tiny marine snail called Drupella seems to have a similar lifestyle to the famous crown of thorns starfish. It eats coral. And just like the crown of thorns in some areas, it appears to be on the increase. Could there be a threat to these reefs other than human? We hear about the balance of nature, but how stable is nature? Is life, even on a coral reef, a series of swings and changes where the so-called balance is always different? These are just a few intriguing questions which illustrate how humans are still far from understanding the total picture of an ecosystem. The vast Ningaloo Reef and the adjacent Cape Range National Park are still much as they used to be, rich, relatively untouched, beautiful. Humans have yet to make the devastating impact that they've made in some other places around the globe. This is one of the reasons why there is
immigrant from overseas. You see him hiding behind